Are you new to Power BI and you're struggling to turn your data into insights? Maybe your Power BI report looks like a polished Excel table. It's super clean, but it doesn't tell a story. That's totally normal, and there's an easy way to fix it. One powerful way to make your data speak is to compare values over time, like year over year or month over month. That way you can immediately spot trends and changes. And today I'm going to show you how to calculate time-based differences using DAX in Power BI, and also how to visualize them in a compelling way so your data always tells a story. In this example, I'm using border crossing entry data from the US Bureau of Transportation Statistics. It shows the number of vehicles, containers, passengers, and pedestrians entering the US from Mexico and Canada, broken down by port of entry, mode of transportation, and time. It's a publicly available data set, and it gives us a great basis for the year-over-year analysis. To save time, I've already added a simple KPI card, as you see on the left, and also a table underneath, including the amount of entries. And I also embedded a custom background that I have built in PowerPoint beforehand. Here you can see all the fields like border date, etc. And now let's have a preview of the data. So just go to table view. As you can see, the data types also look good. The first thing we need is an independent calendar table. This is a best practice in Power BI because it ensures you have a complete set of dates, even if your data is missing some dates. And it gives you full control over how time-based calculations work. I'll create a dynamic calendar using the min and max of the existing date column. This way, it adjusts automatically if the data is changing. Now that we have the calendar, I'll also add a column for the year because I want to show you how to calculate the difference between the years. So year-over-year value difference. Next, I'll create a relationship between my data table transportation and the calendar table we just created. To do that, we just need to connect the date fields of both tables via drag and drop. I'm also setting the cross filter direction to both, so filters can flow both ways independent of which date column you select for your filters. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention is that I do have a custom date filter set, so I don't have all the years, just be aware of it. Perfect. Next, let's create a measure table to keep all calculated measures in one place. Enter data and rename the table. Now let's create the calculations for the year-over-year absolute difference. To do that, first we need to define the selected year from our calendar. Then we identify the value for the selected year and the one right before it. To keep things clean, we return a blank if there's no data for the previous year, avoiding misleading results or division errors. And if there is a value, we return the difference between the selected and the respective previous year. Now that we added a custom measure, we can also delete the empty column from the added table. And now let's add everything to the table. Start by adding the year. Make sure to disable the aggregation for this field. Then add the absolute difference we just calculated. Voila! You can now use this table to validate the calculation. We'll also need this measure later for formatting, so keep it in the model, but feel free to remove it from the visual table for now. Now let's calculate the year-over-year percentage change. First, get the current selected year from the calendar. Then we calculate the value for the previous year, just like we did before. If that previous year value is missing or 0, we again return a blank to avoid misleading results or divide by 0 errors. Otherwise, we take the absolute difference from our previous measure and divide it by the previous year's value, giving us the percentage change. And now, instead of just returning the difference, let's add some formatting to it. First of all, let's separate the difference into a variable. And now let's add the format and embed an up arrow symbol for positive change with a plus sign and a down arrow with a minus sign for negative changes. By the way, these symbols can be found using the character map on your Windows machine. I've also formatted the percentage to display 2 decimal places directly within the formula. Perfect. Now we instantly understand whether it's an increase or a drop. You could use conditional formatting to add icons, but I prefer this method because it gives you so much more flexibility in choosing the exact symbols and also in formatting their color along with the text values. Now let's up our game and add some color formatting. I'll create a calculation for this because it's reusable and saves clicks. We'll base it on the absolute difference to check if the value is positive or negative. Since our percent delta is formatted as text, the calculation won't work directly on it. That's why we use the absolute number instead. For colors, you can use red for negative and green for positive, but I prefer red and blue to ensure that everyone can see those, including people with color vision deficiencies. You can see this is a preview of a person with color vision deficiency, and they cannot differentiate between red and green. Therefore, I prefer blue and red because they have a higher probability of being differentiated. Now I'll add font color using conditional formatting, selecting field value as the format style and using the measure we created before. Next, I'll add a slicer to filter by the year. Insert a slicer visual and also add the year field into it. Then I would suggest to set it to between if it is not automatically set. This way you can filter the range of years, which is super practical. And then I'll also turn off the header icons to keep it clean. And next I'll customize it a little bit so the slider is easy to use, and also disable the responsive layout. Position it a little bit. And done. Now we have a cool year range slider. And finally, let's fill in this empty space here with a line chart. Select a line chart, add a year to the x-axis and value to the y-axis. Now let's customize it. First, turn off the x-axis title. For the y-axis, turn off the values and the title. Customize the line. Select smooth as the interpolation type. You can also customize the color right here. I'll keep it as it is. Next, I'll activate the data labels to make the chart more informative at a glance. You can play around with the settings like label density and minimum offset to get the best look. A higher density shows more labels, while lower density helps you to show only some key points. The offset defines the distance of the label to the chart. I'll set the offset to 80. That way the labels sit a bit further from the line, making them easier to read without cluttering the chart. Next, let's activate the title and add our percentage difference. And as a cherry on top, I'll also apply the formatting using our custom measure that we created earlier. Then let's increase the font of the values a bit. You can also customize the color right here. Next, let's add some detail. For example, I'll add the year You can choose any detail value you want. Just make sure it's formatted correctly. Add a background to make the data labels look like KPI cards. Customize layout. Also, add leader lines to it so that we can associate the data labels with their respective chart points. And finally, I'll disable the title and tooltip, but this is totally optional. Perfect! Now you have seen how to calculate and visualize the year-over-year difference in a table as well as a chart. Obviously, you can do the same for months, days, weeks, whatever you need. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.